I bet you didn't see this one coming. That was a pun, the fastest pun we've ever had in this episode because I said I. This episode's about eyes, and I'm just trying to entertain myself while also informing you of the multifold of issues that one can have with sleep apnea. And for the 5% of people who comment 100% of the time, yes, central sleep apnea as well. Because when you're not breathing at night, it's going to cause a lot of systemic damage through your body, but one of the biggest areas is something very few people talk about, know about, anything of that nature here. We're talking about the good old eyeball, which, if you haven't thought of it, which chances are you haven't, because I mean, I didn't. Your eye is basically your brain outside of your skull, right? Kind of weird. But what isn't weird, depending on your perspective, is how this is hooked up to so many different parts of your physiology. Because if your eyes connect to your brain dictates all of your physiology in the most basic level. It's going to cause some problems. So that's why I want to talk about the different issues that occur in the eye, how to counteract them, so that you can always have the eyes to watch my videos, because that's really the highest use of eyes. And of course, educational purposes only. That's a horrible pun. It's a porpoise. It's a dolphin. Of course, this is for educational purposes only, and I'm educating you to tell you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Now, sleep apnea, we're going to go over quite a few different eye problems, really diseases that pop up. We're going to talk about the back of the eyeball. We're going to take a little visit to the middle of the eyeball. We're going to take a visit to the front of the eyeball with your lens here. So just stick with me here. So just super basic eye anatomy here. We cut your eyeball, like this is side view. Okay. Kind of cut it in half here. Not very pleasant sounding or feeling, right? And what we're going to focus in on is kind of these layers in the back here. This one is probably the most important, I guess debatable, the retina. I guess the retina is what contains a lot of the nerves to help you actually see. So I guess it is the most important. The retina is going to be this back layer here of the eyeball. Then there's this little layer back here, the choroid plexus. Well, I mean, it is a plexus. This contains a lot of the blood vessel that feeds the retina. So these two layers, very, very important. That's what we're talking about here. And when they actually do this scan, sorry if this is just like the most boring eye thing of all time, kind of necessary background here. This is a scan that they'll do. They want to see what is the thickness of your retina, what is the health of the choroid here. Because if the retina is really thin or conversely really thick, that's going to be a problem. If this layer of the choroid with a lot of the blood vessels isn't properly feeding the retina, that's also a problem. Cause some damage here. So lo and behold, what happens? So when you do this similar eye scan in people with obstructive sleep apnea, obviously you can tell, okay, you probably can't. I can't either. Because when they do these scans, the differences are like very, very small. But nonetheless, there you can tell here, it's not just going to be normal. The thickness in the retina goes down. So it is becoming less and less healthy. And this also happens the more and more severe your sleep apnea is. A lot of this is going to happen because when you have oxidative damage, it's going to cause a lot of issues in the vascular system, in the choroid here. And then as a result, that will then damage the retina. Then as a result, bad things happen to the eyes, loss of vision, all that sort of not fun stuff. And you can't even watch these episodes, right? Number two, glaucoma. So this is going to come from having increased pressure in the eyeball here. Looks lovely, right? And glaucoma is pretty bad because, I mean, this is really what happens over time. You just kind of lose that vision around and you can't look out into this in Maine. I have a feeling this picture is in Maine. I want you to guess where this is from. I think it's on the screen. I just saw the answer, but guess in the comments where this is from, and I'll let you know the correct answer in a moment. Now, the basic premise of glaucoma is you have increased pressure. It's going to cause problems throughout the eyeball. Your eyeball is not meant to handle a lot of pressure. But the thing is, it's not as simple as if you've gone to an ophthalmologist or optometrist. I would assume they both screen for glaucoma with a eye pressure check. This study found silent glaucoma to develop, which meant that the pressure wasn't crazy high in the eye, but that still led to a lot of cases of glaucoma developing despite not being able to detect it early. So bottom line is sleep apnea twice as likely to develop silent glaucoma. Now, back to our guessing game. I don't think you actually saw it, but this is apparently from Long Beach, California. I don't know where. Like, where is there an island with pine trees? Or maybe it's not an island, but I'm definitely off track. Third thing is going to be cataracts here. Now, cataracts, that's when you have an issue with the lens here. This is, I mean, do I need to describe a lens? you, you have glasses or seeing glasses, very similar concept just inside your eyes. And this becomes cloudy over time due to high oxidative stress. Can also, be made worse by the pressure inside. Once again, this is increased dramatically in sleep apnea by 20, 60%. And the damage is devastating because every single time you look at a sunflower, it is going to be blurry. Okay. Scientists are not sure if the effect also applies outside of sunflowers, but we don't want to risk it. Now, all of those are pretty bad and scary. No one likes to have blindness, but I would also argue there's something far worse and far more sinister underneath. Because when I was showing you this earlier and then hinting at like there's a lot of downstream effects, yes, there is. So when we look at the eye again, if we zoom way in, remember that retina sort of layer we talked about? This is what you'll see. A lot of these photoreceptors, as the name maybe implies, they are things that pick up photons of different wavelengths. And yes, they allow you to see color, contrast, great stuff. Now, there's one in particular that is probably the most important for what I just mentioned here. This downstream physiological impact is known as melanopsin. The reason melanopsin is so important is because it senses this set of wavelengths specifically. It goes a little bit beyond 480 and 450, but just blue light and also some green light is going to be sensed by melanopsin. The reason that's important is because then that will program your body's circadian rhythm. So if melanopsin is off and damaged, then it's going to prevent you from having a healthy circadian rhythm. What that can look like is your melatonin levels, your sleep hormone, instead of going way up to help you have good, high quality sleep, it's going to go up like a tiny bit because you have damage in the eye, whether it's from the lens, whether it's from glaucoma, whether it's from the back of the retina and the choroid plexus thinning. Then you can't sense blue light as well as you should be able to. And then your circadian rhythm is dampened or has less intensity there. That's going to cause a lot of issues because your circadian rhythm basically controls every single physiological process in your body. When your body makes cortisol, determined by your circadian rhythm. When your body makes hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, etc., determined by your circadian rhythm. When is your body going to release insulin? So you have glucose go into your cells and you don't have high blood sugar and diabetes and everything downstream. Your circadian rhythm. What is your blood pressure going to be like? What's going to be the strength of your heart pounding? That's also going to be largely determined by your circadian rhythm. So if this is off because your eyeballs are off, that causes a lot of other issues down underneath that just can't simply be replaced by a cataract surgery. So this is a big, big deal. That's why a lot of times, yes, it's going to be very important to have good, healthy breathing. And then we want to talk about some specific things to do for the eyes, right? And I'll get into that in just a moment. But of course, having good, healthy breathing, paramount. Talk about this a lot. I think every single episode I mention this, maybe. Kind of my goal. But we want to make sure that this fast or regular inhale is pulling the tissues together, causing them to collapse. Want that to be slow, steady, happy, all of that. Okay. I talk about that quite a bit. Don't want to, just repeat that endlessly. And if you're someone who's out there and watching a bunch of videos all the time, you want a more concrete way and also direct access to me, because I know this is just a YouTube video, but being able to have more of that interaction, get your questions answered, beyond all that, that's what we have available in the Peckus breathing program. I think that's what we're calling it for now. And I mean, it's pretty much just simply that. You get custom health protocols around breathing, also around other holistic things. So instead of having to sift through videos, you just get easy step-by-step things and also live support from me in Q&A. So it's ochnow.com/program there. And just some, things people have said, Sting says that every breath has been fantastic. And then the movie Top Gun, I know this is not Tom Cruise, but these are just lame jokes. And these are not actual celebrity endorsements. But speaking of endorsements, I'll just put the link up top there And obviously, these are just jokes. Don't sue me, Sting, because I know Sting likes to sue people for the rights of his music. So back to Melanopsin. How can we prevent this damage? Well, it really all hinges around the nutrients you can bring to your eyes and also how you're treating your eyes. So let's go over that. So what can we do for the eye research edition as opposed to non-research edition and just a bunch of made up, Hawk Tuah kind of stuff? So there's this formula, if you will, called AREDS, and there's AREDS 2. I guess they had a sequel. And I think this might be the only company that makes it. I mean, when I Googled it, this was like pretty much it. And effectively, it's been researched and shown to have antioxidants that have been able to slow down macular degeneration and other eye diseases. So that's always preferred. And of course, it's up to you if you want to add like yet another supplement. I know, right? Or if you can selectively include things in your diet that would be super duper helpful. So let me make sure see this all on the screen here. There you go. And these are all things, these are the components of AREDS and also AREDS 2, the sequel. All right. Maybe they'll have 3 come out. Be like John Wick of eye health. Probably not if you've seen the movies. There's a lot of eye stabbing that goes on. Transitioning from John Wick into nutrition, vitamin C. I put some of the highest sources because, yeah, you can play around with blueberries all day. That's cool. You can also do things like Camu. Camu is probably the easiest one to access there. Really high in vitamin C. Vitamin E, things like avocados are going to be great sources. These two here are going to be pretty hard to find. So lutein and zeaxanthin. Yeah, they're not gonna be in the greatest sources of foods, but here are some. And honestly, you may have to get these like supplemental forms as is. There is another one called astaxanthin. No, I'm not going to spell that out for you, but what I will say is that it is what makes shrimp pink. So you can eat shrimp and their shells. You can also eat flamingo, but I'm not sure, are flamingos protected birds? I don't know. You would think in Florida they would inform people of that when you move down here, but I'm not advocating for the consumption of flamingos. Moving on, zinc and copper, because I talk about those in pairs pretty often. Oysters are going to be great sources of that. Liver, great sources of copper there. Make sure that you balance things correctly. Usually go for higher zinc sources off the get-go, and then bring in more copper-rich sources. That's just a general idea there. Your personal mileage will vary. That's the nutrients around the eyes, and then what to do for your eyes besides looking at silly graphics and pictures on screen I put for you. There are 3 big principles. Number 1 is going to be the 20-20-20 rule. Did I say that 3 times? I think so. So this rule is all about the idea that for the first time in human history, we spend most of our time looking at things within like 1 foot to like 3 feet of us, not very far. As a result, our eyes kind of like will accommodate or change how they function to fit that. However, that is just very against the design of your eye. So about every 20 minutes, you want to look about 20 feet away for about 20 seconds. Now, this is great because if you're at a computer, you can look at the window to a tree, right? Or you can just go outside for a little bit. If you're having to talk to people all the time, you can also just zone out. Just zone out, stop engaging the conversation. You probably don't need to be having that conversation in the first place. And you can just look far away. And then a lot of times it will reduce people talking to you even more. It's a very effective tactic and trick, if you will, that I've been using to really limit the amount of people who talk to me. Really suggest that. Number 2 is being able to get outside. I hope you know when I'm joking or when I'm serious. Number 2 is being able to get some sun snacks. Now, a lot of times we get fed the idea that the sun is going to burn holes into the back of your retina, which is true if you stare at the sun and look at it directly, or if you're like out on a boat or like on a ski resort all the time. Yeah, that's going to be very intense. However, just being outside and getting a good amount of just like whether it's reflected off or just ambient lighting, that is actually going to be very beneficial for the retina because things like infrared and red light of an appropriate intensity are going to be helpful. Evidence that sunglasses prevent, all these widespread ophthalmological diseases, not really good evidence in a primary prevention with plain English. There's not great evidence that if you're just someone who's going about your life and you wear sunglasses for like 20 years of your life, there's really not evidence to suggest that's going to decrease your risk of glaucoma or any of those other pathologies. Now, you can argue that if you've had surgery, etc., afterwards, the evidence kind of goes either way, no change or some positive benefit, but in terms of primary prevention, preventing the problem before it starts, not as solid as you think. And lastly is reducing artificial blue light exposure, unless you're watching one of my videos. But the idea is there's going to be an excess amount of blue light coming from a screen, right? Or from like lights at Walmart. And you could totally say, well, that's way less than coming out of the sun. And you're right. But the thing is, our eye perceives the relative amount of light because all different wavelengths of light, like blue versus red, think of it like a seesaw. Sunlight, they're going to be pretty balanced. Blue light will lead to more oxidative stress, red light will reduce it. I'm making things very simple. But when, say, you're staring at a screen or you're inside, blue light goes way up, red light's way down. So you have more oxidative stress coming in and then less red light antioxidative capacity to balance it out. So whether it's, using a filter, something of that nature, or different lights, or taking your stuff outside when you use it, that's gonna be really helpful there. So there's a table, get a screenshot. And then another thing that I wanna mention is, this is gonna be something that will be as reversible as you think it is. Because I know, well, at least when I made this, I was thinking people were gonna comment like, "Oh my god, but, like, is it too late for me?" etcetera. Nobody knows, but what I can say is people who think things are just completely irreversible and there can be nothing done about it, they're right. They will do nothing about it. But there are people who, they make some progress because they have that, idea like, hey, I can do something about that. So I would encourage you to have that level of agency. And another thing, more emerging, if you will, is the positive benefit of red light therapy for some of these conditions. Um, I don't wanna dive into another 20 minutes of discussion about that, but it is something, that is being shown to be promising in some of the literature, so if you wanna check that out, you totally can. Now, obviously, these things can be a little bit easier to do before you're using a red light in some capacity, and, make sure you research that before taking any action. So, there you go, that is the eye stuff there again, and once again, if you wanna get in on the program here to get custom protocols for your health, direct access to me, you'll have even more help to joke ratios is what this program promises to deliver, or maybe just more jokes before I answer your questions and help you out. But nonetheless, super helpful. So go to ochnow.com/program for that. Dylan Peckus here, signing off. Thank you and have a good night. I'll see you soon.